Gather around, all dragon riders, because House of the Dragon is officially part of our lives now. But let's be honest, this show can be a little hard to follow along, especially if you're trying to compare it to the original Game of Thrones series, but that's exactly why we're here. In this video, we're bringing you a complete guide to the show and getting you up to speed on everything you need to know. First up, is there a House of the Dragon book? This is a mixed pot. House of the Dragon is technically based on George R.R. Martin's Fire and Blood, which was released in 2018. It's the first volume in a planned two-part exploration of House Targaryen's history, and the second part is yet to be published. While it draws heavily from Fire and Blood, it offers more flexibility than Game of Thrones in terms of narrative. House of the Dragon, however, is still deeply rooted in George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire novel series, even though it isn't a direct adaptation. The show explores a side of Westeros that has never been seen before and promises to give viewers an intriguing new perspective on one of the most beloved universes. So even the people that have read the books will get something new to watch on the show. Next up, how early is the prequel compared to Game of Thrones? House of the Dragon is set roughly 200 years before Robert Baratheon's death sparked the War of the Five Kings, which began around 298 AC in George R.R. Martin's timeline for Game of Thrones. It's expected that this series will span a far longer period than its predecessor did, covering decades building towards the historic Dance of the Dragons, which took place in 129 AC. Rhaenyra is basically Daenerys' sixth great-grandmother, and the show builds from that point. Hopefully at some point, we'll make it back to the Targaryens we know from the Game of Thrones. Coming up are David Benioff and D.B. Weiss doing the show as well. No, David Benioff and D.B. Weiss aren't involved in the production of House of the Dragon. While they served as showrunners for all 8 seasons of Game of Thrones, after running out of ideas for the final season and delivering one that was a disappointment to fans worldwide, let's just say that people didn't really want more from the two. Now, Ryan J. Condal and Michael Sapochnik are taking the reins as showrunners for House of the Dragon. While Sapochnik is already familiar with the world of Westeros, having served as the director of Game of Thrones, this marks Condal's first foray into that universe. However, with how well the show has been received so far, let's just say the show is in great hands. Next up are Starks and Lannisters in the House of the Dragon. House of the Dragon brings much beloved Game of Thrones families to life. House Stark, House Lannister, and House Baratheon are all in the show. While George R.R. Martin's source material also allows for Greyjoys, Tarlys, and Aryans to join the fray, for now we've just seen the main families and will most likely build upon their importance later on in the series. The story of House of the Dragon is a Targaryen tale, so while the other houses are in the show, the focus remains on the dragon riders. Coming up, will we see any new houses in House of the Dragon? House of the Dragon highlights 2 houses that had a limited presence in Game of Thrones or none at all. House Hightower stands out as a major force in the spin-off series, with Ser Otto serving as Hand of the King and his daughter symbolically setting off the Dance of the Dragons. Though House Hightower does exist in the original series, they are seen less often and more loyal to House Lannister. On the other hand, House Valyrian is propelled to the forefront in House of the Dragon and plays an important role due to their marriage ties with the Iron Throne. In Game of Thrones, however, they were little more than supporters of Stannis Baratheon and with little to no influence. House of the Dragon has shifted this dynamic, allowing them to hold their own as a major house in Westeros, so the change has been quite interesting to see.
What is our standing?
We have 30 knights, 100 crossbowmen, and 300 men-at-arms. Dragonstone is relatively easy to defend, but as an instrument of conquest, our army leaves a lot to be desired.
Now for the Dragon's main characters. Paddy Considine portrayed King Viserys Targaryen, and we saw him on the iconic Iron Throne of House of the Dragon. Emma Darcy and Millie Alcock both took on the role of his daughter, Princess Rhaenyra, with Matt Smith taking up the mantle of Viserys' younger brother. Emily Carey and Olivia Cooke were cast as Lady Alicent Hightower, the daughter of Hand of the King, Ser Otto Hightower, played by Rhys Ifans, and a constant presence in the Targaryen court. Sir Criston Cole, played by Fabian Frankel, made his presence known in the show as the Knight of the Kingsguard, even if it was mostly the presence of the Petty X. And finally, Steve Toussaint portrayed Lord Corlys Seasnake Velaryon, husband of Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen, who's played by Eve Best, who had once been a contender for the Iron Throne until she was passed over for a male heir, something she can't stop talking about.
I think, yes, it does. I think the funny thing is, and that's true about Paddy, but I think it's true of the cast in general. There were people on it, from my point of view anyway, who I'd heard of.
Not to mention, is House of the Dragon as graphic as Game of Thrones? Game of Thrones was renowned for its explicit violence and scenes, so much that it made TV censors shudder. House of the Dragons will also include these elements, but Matt Smith confessed to being taken aback by the extent of its box scenes. Although House of the Dragon will stay true to the same tone as Game of Thrones, Ryan J. Condal and Miguel Sapochnik have assured viewers that it won't be as graphic after the controversy surrounding Sansa's sexual assault scene and other moments during Game of Thrones' run gave the show a bad rep. Executive producer Sarah Hess further reinforced this by promising House of the Dragon would handle sexual violence with far more sensitivity. All these decisions were made to ensure the show remains tasteful and watchable while still delivering the same level of excitement that Game of Thrones fans have come to expect. A step in the right direction for sure.
They crowned him before the masses.
So that the masses would see him as their rightful king.
That whore of a queen murdered my brother and stole his throne, and you could have burnt more for it.
Coming up, are there any dragons in House of the Dragon? The sheer magnitude of epic battles and beloved characters in Game of Thrones was no doubt a huge part of its success, but it's impossible to deny that the CGI dragons were also a major attraction for viewers. We all loved watching Dany's 3 dragons snuff out her enemies whenever they dared challenge her. It looks like fans of the show won't have to worry about a lack of fire-breathing lizards in House of the Dragon, as it's set to take place during the peak of the Targaryen Empire, which of course means plenty of dragons. According to author George R.R. Martin himself, there'll be a whopping 17 dragons in House of the Dragon, and while we've met some of them already, it just opens up a whole other arena for more and more dragons to make an appearance throughout the show. Up next, are White Walkers a thing in the House of the Dragon? No, House of the Dragon won't feature any White Walkers. The Long Night in Battle for the Dawn, where White Walkers first descended upon Westeros and were pushed back, happened over 8,000 years before the events of House of the Dragon. During this time, stories of these mysterious ice zombies spread throughout Westeros, with many people refusing to believe they even existed. Even in Game of Thrones, people refused to believe the White Walkers were real, so in the House of the Dragon, the icy guys were nothing but crazy talk. Now for the question everyone's wondering, are there any Game of Thrones characters in House of the Dragon? Considering most of the characters in the Game of Thrones were, well, normal human beings, no one really expected any of them in the prequel. Maester Aemon and the Three-Eyed Raven were already quite advanced in age during Game of Thrones, so they wouldn't have been born even close to the spin-off's timeline. However, there is one character who could potentially appear in House of the Dragon, Melisandre. Not much is known about her age, and she could be anywhere from 200 to 400 years old during the events of Game of Thrones. Since this falls within the timeline of King Viserys Targaryen's rule, Melisandre could potentially make a return if House of the Dragon decides that some twisted shadow magic is needed, or, you know, just to tip the hat to the original show. Next up, how long is the first season of the House of the Dragon? The House of the Dragon Season 1 has 10 episodes in total. The first 9 all run for about an hour each, with the final episode spanning 82 minutes overall, so it's perfect for a weekend binge. Finally, will there be a House of the Dragon Season 2? Yes, House of the Dragon has officially been renewed for a second season. However, we don't expect it anytime soon, considering the filming won't even begin until next year. But from the looks of things, this is going to be a show that lasts for years. And on that note, we'll wrap up today's video. Do you still have unanswered questions from the House of the Dragon? Let us know in the comments below, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos just like this, and we'll see you in the next one.